Hello, Mr. Montalvo here, U.S. History, and today we're going to be taking a look at the balance of power that is established within the United States Constitution. Yesterday we discussed the system of checks and balances in general, and today we're going to be taking a look at each individual one of the branches. So our objectives for today is to compare and contrast the powers granted to Congress, the President, and the Supreme Court by the Constitution, and then examine how checks and balances work by tracing how bills become laws. So let's start with the executive branch. It's headed by the President and also includes the Vice President and any appointed advisors. The President is responsible for carrying out all the laws passed by Congress and is the chief of the armed forces and is responsible for all foreign relations. If you want to take a look at what an typical executive branch on the state level looks like, here's an example right here below. You have the governor, you have his sort of members of the cabinet, and then the divisions within the executive branch. Just an example of looking at it at a state level as well. Now, the authors of the United States Constitution created something known as the Electoral College system because they did not trust the judgment of the common people in electing the president. The Electoral College would be made up of electors from every state. Every 4 years, the Electoral College would meet as a group and vote for president and vice president of the United States. Now, we take a look at one example from 1992 of Electoral College results. We'll take a look at another example that's much more recent in a moment, but take a look at the difference between the popular vote and the difference between the Electoral College vote. Now, under the popular vote, there is no clear winner, right? No one has over 50%. Now, when we switch over to the Electoral College vote, we can see that that third-party candidate that received 19% is not represented at all in the Electoral College. So try to think to yourself, does the Electoral College reflect the popular vote? And also, how fair is that? Now, if this map doesn't look familiar, it should. This is a map of the 2016 election. We can see here that President Trump receives 290 Electoral College votes, Hillary Clinton receiving 232 Electoral College votes. President Trump is clearly the winner. Now, you need 270 Electoral College votes to determine a winner in the Electoral College. But if you take a look at the percentage in the popular vote, President Trump receives less popular votes than Hillary Clinton. So why is President Trump our president? This is the Electoral College in play here. It's a clear determination that at the end of the day, the popular vote doesn't really matter or factor in. It's the vote of the Electoral College that determines who becomes our next president. Now, Article 3 of the Constitution calls for a Supreme Court and other federal courts. The Supreme Court and other federal courts hear cases that involve the Constitution and any laws that are passed by Congress. And there are multiple layers to the judicial branch as well. The Supreme Court, of course, is at the top, but then there's the appellate court and the circuit courts. Now, Congress is the legislative branch of government, and its main function is to make laws. The legislative branch has the power to collect taxes and the power to regulate foreign trade and interstate trade. In foreign affairs, Congress has the power to declare war and to raise and support armies. So even though our president is the chief foreign officer, he can design treaties, or she can design treaties with other nations. But if those treaties are going to be approved and the United States is going to enter into those treaties, it is Congress who has to sign off on them. So here's an example of the system of checks and balances in place between the two branches. What are the two houses that make up Congress, if we remember? We have the lower house, which is the House of Representatives, and the upper house, which is the Senate. Now, the president can check the power of Congress by vetoing or rejecting a proposed law or bill. Congress can check the president by overriding or overruling the president's veto by a new additional 2/3 vote. Now, the president has the power to appoint officials in our government. However, the Senate must approve all of his or her appointments, or their appointments. The president can improve a treaty, but the Senate must approve it by 2/3 majority. Congress has the power to remove a president from office if they find the president guilty of a crime. Now, when a president is charged with a crime or misdemeanor, it is called an impeachment. Now, just because a president is impeached does not mean he or she or they are removed from office. Now, in our two most recent instances, the impeachment of President Clinton and the new impeachment of President Trump, while they were impeached, and that process played its way out through the House of Representatives, in which the impeachment power lies, they were not removed from office. Now, how is the ability to impeach the president a check on the executive branch by the legislative branch? Think of the design there by the architects of the Constitution. The idea that if they felt or a president was found to have abused his, her, or their power, then there were repercussions, aka we are able to compete or have safeguards against the rise of a tyrannical president or leader, a person who abuses their power. Now, the president and Congress have checks on the courts. The president appoints the judges in the courts, but the Senate must approve of them. So Congress can also remove them from office if necessary through a similar process of impeachment. The framers of the United States Constitution proposed that members of the Supreme Court be appointed for life, so that justices' ruling would be protected from political influence. Now, this has gotten a bit of backlash in recent times, with many saying that a full life, a lifetime term could have its own drawbacks as well. Now, the article that I have linked to this text is leveled, so there are various reading levels depending on your comfort. 1250 being the highest reading level, high school level and above. 910, which is around 7th, 6th grade level, and then a lower grade level, which is 610, which can provide a bit of an easier way to digest this article if necessary. So feel free to pick whichever one you're the most comfortable with so you can really understand and grasp this information. Now, in addition to that, I'm going to link part 2 of the same assignment that we were working on for the previous day, but this time focusing on the sections of the executive and the judicial branch, and then taxes and amendments, that in-depth analysis and breakdown of the Constitution, and comparing it to the Articles of Confederation where appropriate. In addition to that, I've linked the Supreme Court article, as I mentioned before, in its various levels, and try to write a central idea paragraph that explains the central idea, and try to use at least 2 details to support your claim. So cite your evidence, but then explain it in your own words, what it means. Now, in order to wrap up our discussion for today, our exit ticket, try to describe the function, the job, of the Electoral College. In addition to that, explain to me how fair or maybe unfair you think it is. And then, is it still relevant for our society today? Should the Electoral College still exist, or should we just stick to the popular vote? Now, that's all for today. Hope to see you soon. Take care.